Risk taker, businessman, sports and entertainment promoter, and passionate about making Florida the best place to live, shop, work, and play. It's time for the Joe Mullins Radio Show.
Hello, Florida. This is Joe Mullins of the Live, Work, Shop, Play Show, and welcome to one of the most beautiful weekends. It is almost summertime. School is almost out. The kids are going to be playing. They're going to be having a good time. Families are going to be vacationing. And the question that so many people have is Florida still one of the safest places to live, work, shop, and play in? And let's talk today. I've got a great sheriff, one of our best sheriffs in the state of Florida and in the country. I've got Sheriff Hardwick of St. Johns County, one of our biggest tourism counties. St. Augustine, as a lot of you guys know it, in the country, and one of the fastest growing counties in the country. Sheriff, welcome to the show today.
Joe, thanks for having me on, and looking forward to, of course, our conversation and just, kind of enlightening people on things we're doing different here in the great state of Florida to keep people safe as they either come on vacation or, of course, buy a home here. So looking forward to our talk today. Thank you.
St. Augustine, which is one of your cities in your county, is well known across the world. It's actually the first city that was founded in the country of of America, and it has a tremendous amount of tourism in it, a tremendous amount of people coming in. But with tourism, there's a lot of stuff that comes through the cities that's not so good and not so great to have. And St. John certainly has a history of having people come through, but y'all have sent a very strong message out that if you're going to come through here and you're a criminal, you might want to avoid the county and not come through it. Y'all done a great job in that. Tell me, what have y'all done over the years to make St. John's so safe and such a community-friendly and a tourism-friendly place?
Sure, Joe. People forget, too, and not to insult anybody's intelligence, but St. Johns County is 601 square miles of land and 221 square miles of water. We're bordered by, of course, the ocean on our east side and the St. Johns River on our west side. We have Jacksonville to the north and Daytona or Flagler County to our south. But I think the key thing is that, we don't use the normal formula of 2.5 deputy sheriffs per 1,000 people. We implement, technology-based policing, which we'll talk about here in a minute, but also, too, the relationships that we share with our federal, state, and local government. And, of course, us just being upfront and out in people and enlightening them, of course, how we're doing things different here in St. Johns County. So it's kind of a big thing where we actually put together all these pieces of the puzzle, and it comes together to, of course, have the safest place to live, work, play, raise a family, and eventually retire. And it doesn't hurt us at all, too. We have one of the best school districts, of course, in the United States. People see that when they research, of course, our area. But we're very diverse, too, as well. We're a female-dominant county. I think everybody knows we're one of the fastest-growing communities or counties in the United States. We have around 350,000 people. We didn't have that 10 years ago. We're 43% increase in our population. But what we've done is how are we maintaining, of course, the control over our increase in population, but of course, keeping the actual things that are important, which is our crime down. And again, that's that technology-based policing. I call it policing from behind keyboards. Having those partnerships with not just the local government with the Florida Department of Transportation cameras, but, using technology and not abusing technology like license plate readers and iris and our FUSIS, which is our aggregator in the sky that kind of puts all those software and data together so we can actually read it and use it in our benefit to keep crime low. And then also, too, we have a community that accepts our policing techniques. As you said earlier, Joe, we're very progressive. I call professionally aggressive. Our foot's on the gas around here. We're not going to tolerate criminals and crime happening in our jurisdiction. I have a great partnership with, of course, my brothers and sisters, or brother and sister, I should say, Sheriff Cook in Clay County and Sheriff T.K. Waters in Jacksonville, Duval County, Sheriff Staley in Flagler County, and Sheriff Gator Deloach in Putnam County. So those relationships, along with our, we got the ability here, too, to invest in policing, and our community allows us to do that with a very, a budget that's very healthy that the 5 commissioners continue to increase and improve every year.
Sheriff, when I was a commissioner in Flagler County, I came in, and I'm not going to ever knock a sheriff. I think sheriffs are great. They do an amazing job. And even our past ones, for the time they had and the technology they had and the tools they had, they did a good job. I think that some of them that stay in a long time tend to not want to grasp the new technology. But one of the things that Sheriff Staley said when he came into office, he and I came in about the same time, And one of the things he said is, Joe, I got to have a better relationship with the other sheriffs. We're kind of siloed and we need to work better as a team. And you guys have really done an amazing job. I see so many different scenarios in the news where y'all are paired up together and doing dual investigations. What's brought that on?
I think, again, it's key to how success for us, for our community. And, sometimes we got to put, our egos aside. And as sheriffs, and of course, then, you've been a commissioner too. And you got to put those egos aside. And this isn't about us. It's about the people we serve. And as you know, the people that live in Flagler County, they live, work, and play. Vice versa. Up in St. Johns County, we live, work, and play in both of our counties. So sharing technology, sharing our equipment, responding to each other's jurisdictions, kind of dropping those borders and letting everybody know that, we're going to work together on policing our communities and solving crime in our communities. But you said it too, Joe, it's the relationship that you share as a commissioner with your sheriff, but also too, it's relationships we share amongst ourselves with sheriffs. So too, me up here, I had the same thing he had. I had to get those relationships and rebuild those relationships because they had been severed over the years. And it started right here in my community with my own commissioners, and with that, I got to have that support. And whether it's 5 commissioners in my situation, 5 commissioners, whether they get along or not, it's not my problem. But whether they get along with the sheriff and they communicate openly and honestly and clear and concise, factual information with me, it's the key to all of our success. So again, put away those egos, put aside everything that we're doing about ourselves and let it be a community-based type of policing.
Sheriff, you couldn't say it more right. When, as an elected official, any time I ran for office and any time I took public meetings or town halls, the number one issue that our county would have or our communities would have is public safety. They always said, we don't care what goes on here. If it's not safe, it isn't going to matter. You can have the best economy, but if your county's not safe and your family, your wife and your kids can't go out and enjoy themselves without fear of being attacked, robbed, or kidnapped, it's no good. And that's on either side of the fence, Republican, Democrat. It's on all sides. That's the most important. And you really brought up a very good point. The public needs to understand that. Sometimes the sheriff and the media tried to all the time put the sheriff against us as commissioners. And one thing I realized is we're a team. We have the same goal. And we've got to make sure we fund our sheriff's departments very strongly. We got to make sure we keep our guys safe, our men and women. As we've seen lately, there's a lot of attacks on law enforcement. We got to make sure these are people's children. These are people's husbands, wives, parents, grandparents. We want to make sure they come home safe. And our community is so crucial all across the country, not just the state of Florida, but it's so crucial that our public supports it through their commissioners and let their commissioners know, hey, quit being cheap on these guys. These guys are risking their lives. Give them the best technology. Now, the last time you and I spoke, you were talking about new technology you're using to reduce the risk of deputies being exposed in high-speed chases or stuff as far as combat and things like that. Let's talk a little bit about how you're doing that. And how that's making a big difference in your community.
Yeah, so I'm just going to back up just a little bit, regress a little bit. We have to invest, of course, in our deputy sheriffs kind of behind the walls too as well. So what we did here at the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office, if I can make a better product that provides a better service to you, I'm no different than a Publix or Walmart or any other type of services that provide resources and or product to our consumers. So what I did here was when I took over as sheriff just 4.5 years ago, we really invested in our agency, meaning this. I have a psychologist on staff here, Dr. Tracy Hedgemanowski. She is for my deputy sheriff and for my employees. I have 3 financial advisors on staff here for my employees and their families. We have a nutritionist. We have a personal trainer on staff. We're very faith-based. We have a Cortico app. And I'd say all this because if I can provide a mentally better deputy sheriff, physically fit deputy sheriff, financially fit, spiritually fit, I can go all through those things. They're going to provide a better service to the consumer. So we start there. And then we take that product that we have in those deputy sheriffs, and then we really invest in our training up here because we can train to do things like hand-to-hand combat, use of our firearms, verbal judo, that good thing. But if we don't use those techniques and those tactics out in the field, then we get rusty. We just simply do it once a year. So we up at the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office, when you enter into our agency as a brand new deputy sheriff, you spend the first 2, almost 3 months, in the classroom learning how to be a deputy sheriff in St. Johns County. That includes also too, where our men and women are level 1 and 2 jiu-jitsu certified. All of our men and women know how to wrestle, know how to get on the ground. And with that, we've seen a significant increase or decrease, I should say, in our officer involved shootings. And of course, our use of force too, as well. So then we invest in our car. So here we have the training, we have behind the scenes of how we make that better, officer mentally fit, spiritually fit, financially fit, and then you put the training together, and then you go out and let them do their job. But you also let them know the community supports them 110%. And it starts with me as your sheriff from the top. I'm in uniform every single day. I do traffic stops. As a matter of fact, I did a traffic stop on the way into work today. I walk my jail at least once a week. I'm out backing up our deputy sheriffs. So you got to invest in your community, not just as a leader and being out in the community, but invest in your community, meaning you've invested in your people and your personnel. So again, so it's open doors, open policies, but also too, listen to what your men and women do and listen to what the community actually wants. But I think up here, Joe, you know very well that we don't tolerate crime. We do chase cars in St. Johns County, but also too, our deputy sheriffs make decisions that, if we need to end the pursuit because the school buses are out, there's traffic out there, or maybe it's just not worth the juice or the squeeze, So we just make those command decisions. But up here too, the deputy sheriff on their own can call for our real-time intelligence center, which we'll talk about here in a minute. They can call for the air unit. They don't need to go through a supervisor to get those resources there. So again, community engagement, community involvement, support from the community, and just knowing how to do our job with confidence, knowing the community supports us.
We're going to come right back after this commercial break. We want to thank you for listening to Live, Work, Shop, Play, the Joe Mullins Show. And if you want to advertise and connect with our many, many listeners around the country, please reach out to events@tmc.work. And if you have any show topics or people you'd like to see come on, like our Facebook page to follow upcoming shows and to give us any recommendations. The Live, Work, Shop, Play page of Florida on Facebook and Instagram. Live, Work, Shop, Play. Have a great weekend. Welcome back to the Live, Work, Shop, Play show. Sheriff, you bring up the technology and the stuff. I got a question for you, and this is a thing we've heard. I've seen the counties working a lot together, and they use technology, and they start tracking someone in another county, and they come through. Yeah. What is the truth to the myth? And I'm going to say myth, or to the saying that a law enforcement agent that is in St. John's cannot pursue or travel to the next county over. Is that true? Does a person who does a crime in St. John's, in their mind, if they get out of the county quickest, they're safe? Is that a true statement? Is that something that local people need to be aware of?
Absolutely not. Not here in St. Johns County. We have such a great relationship, of course. That fresh pursuit law is pretty much cut and dry as far as you commit a crime in another jurisdiction and cross jurisdictional boundaries. Do you have the right to pursue? Well, of course, in the state of Florida, the great state of Florida, especially relationships among the 67 sheriffs, we all sign an MOU together. Physically, all of our signatures are on there. All 67 sheriffs that say we're going to work together to fight crime. So here, of course, as you mentioned earlier, the relationships that I share with, your sheriff down, of course, in Flagler County with Rick Staley, we don't have any boundaries. Now, we have professional courtesy, meaning that we reach out to those entities and agencies to let them know what is going on. But now with our technology-based policing, we share all this stuff together. Like they can see the data from my license plate readers. They can see any data that we have up here that used to be so sacred. We'd hide it from everybody else. Like, no, it's ours. It belongs to St. John County. It does not. It belongs to the citizens of the great state of Florida. So with that, those relationships, those strong MOUs, we can pursue into jurisdictions as long as it's within our policy. And again, we love those courtesies, but most of the time, 99% of the time, the other agencies get involved with us.
Sure. As we talk about technology and some of the safe things, one thing that I've noticed with you that you do in your community, and I've noticed it with a lot of successful sheriffs around the country, they're very engaged and involved with their community. They start with the youth. They paint a new image. The image over sheriff's deputies and sheriff's offices of the past 10 years have been painted as this bad job or bad people. And you guys have certainly gone through a lot of abuse and a lot of public scrutiny that you've never seen in any decade. What have you done in St. Johns County to portray a different visual image of the sheriff's deputy and the sheriff's force.
With horrific incidents that happen around the world, the country, we get better at our job because of these sacrifices. So, of course, you look back in 2018 where 17 people were wounded, 17 people were injured in a place called Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. What that did was those sacrifices of those individuals, but the entire country went upside down. Mental health based in our schools and these kids, in fears. And it was really the tip of the iceberg and the boiling point, I should say, for us to get better at what we do. So what the law did in the state of Florida was it allowed us, it forced us to put law enforcement deputies in every one of our schools and not just our high schools across the great state of Florida. So, with that Marjorie Stoneman Douglas incident, we have now in St. Johns County, in all 45 of our public schools, we have at least one law enforcement officer. So now it gave us a chance to have those deputy sheriffs here up in St. Johns County with almost 54,000 students up here in our public school system up here. How do we get better now at interacting in their life at the youngest age? So now I feel like with that, again, those acts, and of course, that happened under that horrific day, we now have a deputy sheriff at every school, but now you get that interaction at the youngest age, pre-K, K, and first grade, all the way up, of course, into high school. What I saw back then, of course, and I've been a high school coach up in St. Johns County for almost 28 years, the kids have their minds made up on what they believe on what law enforcement is by the time they get to high school, and you can't change that. Well, now, because of that horrific incident back in 2018, we get to get involved in their lives, of course, much, much earlier. But then it doesn't stop there. It's not the ordinary to see my deputy sheriff at a kid's birthday party at a middle school or playing, hopscotch or foursquare in a local elementary school, out there opening doors and helping a kid, whether it's pre-K or K, get in the seat, car seat and get seat belted in. And being responsive and opening up our agency we're doing a teen academy this year for the summertime. I believe Rick Staley did something very similar, and so does Michelle Cook and Clay in Flagler County, respectively. So again, just trying to get involved in these kids' life. And I just told you a minute ago, me being a high school football coach and a middle school football coach here in St. Johns County, we've really invested in our police athletic league, where we're averaging around 2,600 kids a year in our police athletic league, which are trying to target that at or below the poverty line in southern central St. Johns County. And then also targeting, of course, our free and reduced lunch kids. So again, we're just trying to think outside the box. How do we interact with these kids, but we make it positive? And I think we're doing it. We have 2 canines in our schools up here that are drug sniffing dogs, and they also smell gun metal. But these aren't the aggressive-looking dogs. One is a long-haired, whiskered German short-hair pointer, and the other was a chocolate lab. But those dogs know how to sniff. So again, we're just trying to do things a little bit different up here in St. Johns County to get more involved in these kids' lives. And not everybody's got to go to jail, by the way. There's other programs out there that we can institute and use discretion for and avoid jail if possible to get these kids back on the right track and back on their feet.
And Sheriff, how can the community tourism that's coming in, we air in Orlando, we air in Tampa, and Orlando certainly has its share of battles with crime and tourism coming in and people being safe. How can the local citizens help out and support the sheriff without getting engaged in a car chase or getting engaged in risking their life or carrying guns and trying to shoot back at criminals? What do you recommend for the average resident and tourist to be able to do to help to combat these problems?
Yeah, so first of all, what we've done in St. Johns County is we have our Citizen Law Enforcement Academy. I believe I'm on the 47th session. Matter of fact, tonight I have a graduating class of 32 members in that class. That's one way to educate the community to kind of see what goes on at the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office. How can you get involved? How can you get engaged? What is the right thing to do when you see certain things going on? So we're averaging about 30 to 40 people per class twice a year. They simply spread the word. So that's number one. We have a lot of volunteers at the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office. We speak at HOAs and COAs and associations. I mean, we just don't say no to speaking at town hall meetings and any place else we can get out there and educate the community for what they can or cannot do and how they can assist us. So, I know we use this paraphrase that's been going on forever, maybe abused, but if they see something, we want them to say something. Don't be afraid to call our non-emergency number, or if you just don't remember it because you're kind of in a anxiety mode or panic mode, don't be afraid to pick up the phone and call our non-emergency number. We're revamping our app. We're big into sending out emails and reverse 911 calls. So again, we want our community to get engaged. We want our community to be able to call us and trust us and make the right decisions. And we kind of warn them too. It starts when they pick up the phone, whether they call 911 or they call our non-emergency number. It starts when that 911 operator or that call taker, as we call them, pick up that phone and kind of educate them on what they should or should not do to avoid injury to themselves, of course, and let us do our job. So again, I think it's a multi-prong way of doing business. And I just mentioned several of those ways, but also too, we are big in getting out in the community and educating with our tent set it up, our community engagement set it up. And we have a request reform online where you can request our community engagement team to teach an active shooter course or come in and teach an educational piece on fraud, waste, and abuse, of the elderly in elderly homes. So again, I think it's just thinking outside the box and getting heavily involved in our community. And it starts with me.
Sheriff, I want to thank you. We've covered so much great topics here. And I think one of the biggest points that you have covered is how the community can support with you and work along with you, and how they can support through other government officials and government leadership. The use of technology, how important of a part it's playing, and for its community to know that stuff's not cheap. It's expensive, but you have to invest into it. But the lives you save could be your own child. It's so amazing seeing that. Now, you also are a family man as well, and I love watching how a part of you go events and you've got your wife with you. Your wife is an amazing supporter. I can't imagine at times where she fears, is my husband coming home? Let's talk a little bit as we close up here about public safety and the risk that the deputies have on their lives daily and what's going on there. Let's talk a little bit about that. What are your thoughts of how we can, as a community, end this craziness where deputies are attacked?
Yeah, I think the first thing, we need to discuss is, certain parts of the country where, there's over 850,000 of us that wear some type of uniform that protect and serve our communities, so it's very small percentage of the resistance and violence we get against us. And unfortunately, as we're kind of watching Cincinnati, come to a boiling point up there, it cannot affect the rest of the country of how we do business because we're doing it the right way. And I think the biggest thing, of course, as a leader in law enforcement is when we make a mistake, we own our mistakes, and we immediately own our mistakes very quickly. And we put that clear, concise and factual information out there. But also, too, we stand by our deputies when our deputies do the right thing, or our law enforcement brothers and sisters do the right thing. We tend to get behind them, or we stand next to them only when good things happen. But sometimes we make bad decisions where we hold our people accountable for their actions. And we got to stand up and say that to the public, going, give us time to go through the process. There's a process we must follow called the Officer Bill of Rights in the state of Florida. We got to follow the Officer Bill of Rights in the state of Florida. So give us the time to go through the process. But I think the biggest thing, of course, that in any profession, we automatically, stick to law enforcement as a bunch of bad eggs when we make a mistake. But we're the only ones that are out on Front Street that actually have an internal affairs division. We arrest our own. We hold our own accountable. We have a criminal justice standards and training commission made of 19 commissioners that oversee the discipline of the law enforcement officers in the great state of Florida. So I think people forget about that. But you have to be, I have a faith-based advisory committee that answers directly to me. There's no better way, no quicker way to touch the community through faith. So if we go through faith-based, we can get the majority of the community. So again, you got to have those mechanisms in place to take care of our deputy sheriffs. But here's where I'll leave the conversation with. If you train them, if you provide the confidence in them, you provide the resources to them, they will provide a better product to our communities, period.
Sheriff, I want to thank you. I know you got a busy schedule, and we've got tourism, the tourism season starting right here, whereas our region is going to be so heavily impacted here. I want to thank you for taking the time and joining us, and welcome you back anytime to come in and speak to the community. Again, I think one of the biggest things we as a community can be thankful for is we've got one of the safest states to live, work, shop, and play in. And thank you for making that and doing it.
I appreciate you. It's people like you that support us and allow us to get that clear, concise, and factual information out there. And we support you, and we support, of course, that we appreciate you supporting us. Thank you, Joe.
Have a great weekend, Sheriff. Thank you for joining us.
Have a great day. Yes, sir. Thank you.
And guys, you've just heard from one of the greatest sheriffs that Florida has, and actually the country, Sheriff Hardwick. He is an amazing guy working hard to make sure the St. John's and St. Augustine community stays safe. He's part of an amazing brotherhood of sheriffs that we have across the state of Florida that really care about our people and take good care of the men and women that are protecting us. When you see them, don't just fear them. Go up and say hello. Go up and thank them. Buy a meal every now and then. Tell them how much you appreciate them taking the ultimate risk from being away from their family to make sure you and I are safe. And this is the safest community to live, work, shop, and play in. Have a great weekend.